Welcome back to A People's Guide to Publishing. I'm Joe Beal, the founder and CEO of Microcosm Publishing and Distribution. I'm also the author of A People's Guide to Publishing, which distills what I've learned from selling millions of books over the past 25 years.
I'm Ellie Blue. I'm the editorial and marketing director here at Microcosm. We are an independent mid-list publisher based in Portland, Oregon, and Cleveland, Ohio. We have over 700 books, over 25 employees, and we make about 40 new books every year. And we distribute thousands of titles from other publishers.
We started this podcast so that we can share what we've learned with newer publishers so that you can learn from our mistakes.
Or maybe you just want to understand the publishing industry.
This week, we are going to answer a reader question, which is, I have 20 authors donating their stories to a book because they believe in the mission behind the work of helping nonprofits and sharing their stories for other people that can relate with them. However, one author, who is the only one who hasn't signed, blasted me, accusing me of saying that the agreement is not fair and that the other authors do not know what they've agreed to.
Oh.
How should I proceed?
This person must have some kind of amazing psychic ability.
Oh, right. Yeah, I think the supposition here is that, well, and you run into this a lot where people think, you read a few blogs and you get a sense of, how all publishers are out to give you unfair agreements, and fair agreement is pretty nebulous, to be honest.
Excuse me, Bernie.
And a lot of this stuff is, it's a matter of what you're comfortable with and what's mutually agreeable rather than what's fair, because fair isn't really definable.
Yeah, and it does sound like this agreement is not right for this author. It sounds like they don't agree with it and therefore should not sign it, and the publisher should
find somebody else.
Yeah, or skip them. I mean, that just seems like the long and short of it, and the fact that this author is trying to make it about other people is classic triangulation, and I would not engage with it.
Yeah, and oftentimes if somebody is trying to leverage their point rather than saying, I don't like this or I can't consent to this, they'll say
nobody should consent to this.
Right. They'll say nobody else likes it or we've been talking and none of us like it. But that's not, it's just they're concerned that they won't be taken seriously as an individual if they just state their concerns.
Right.
And it's a weird bit, but it is how it goes sometimes.
So is this person asking for crisis management advice? Is this happening in a public forum, or are they just asking is it actually, are they asking is this actually a fair contract, or what's the question?
I think it's all of those things, and then I think in addition to that, it's the how do I proceed?
Right. Well, sorry that you're having to deal with this.
Right. And this is we've run into this since day one where, people want to feel good about the agreements and, in worst, best, and most likely scenarios.
I mean, so let's imagine the worst scenario in which you are actually taking advantage of all these authors. You've given them a fraudulent agreement. You've lied to them about what their story is being used for, and you're going to get very rich publishing it.
I don't know, that doesn't sound like the worst agreement. The worst agreement seems like you would do all that, the works would become unpublishable, the book would never be published.
And then the authors would no longer own their works, so they couldn't get them published anywhere.
Right, that would be really the worst.
Yeah.
Nobody can read the book after all this and all these hurt feelings.
That's a great point. So how would you deal with it if it was that worst case scenario?
Well, I would have an agreement where the publishing was transferable to somebody else and then they could publish it.
Oh yeah, or if you didn't publish it in a certain amount of time, the rights would revert back to the author.
Or, oh yeah, I'm sorry, do I get to rewrite the contract? If I could do that, I would do a lot of things differently. I would make it so that the rights were non-exclusive, so that the publisher would have publishing rights, but the author would simultaneously own publishing rights for all these. So these works could appear elsewhere in addition to in this collection.
And you can, like, set time frames on that. Like, you can be like, not in the next 5 years or year or whatever.
Yeah, and then you can say, like, if this book doesn't come out, then, like, all rights go back to their authors, and that's called, like, a reversion clause. Or, like, when this book goes out of print, the authors get their rights back, or, you know, and part of it is, you know, you just don't, like, you're not selling a book on the work of even the most famous person in it. You're selling a book on the concept of it as an object. You know, you're selling the value proposition of the collected work, you know. So if it's like scary campfire stories for kids, then, like, nobody is buying it because of, like, the 2 celebrity names.
Right.
They're buying it to have the bejeebies shaken out of their wee-ins. A common phrase said by many people.
That was very grandparently of you.
Okay, well, very well. But, you know, like, when you're publishing something and you're sinking a bunch of money into it, and, you know, it's like you're investing and all that, you tend to get in the scarcity mentality of, like, well, if all these people, like, publish these stories elsewhere, what's to stop anybody from not buying the book?
So while it's not necessarily, like, unfair what you had your authors agree to, it does seem like kind of unnecessary.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I mean, would you advise that they revise their contracts or just kind of, like, go forward?
Well, for most people, they're not going to care.
That is a good point, too.
Like, and it's also, like, if they've already agreed to it, it's almost more disruptive to go back and be like, hi, I have a new agreement that is more in your favor.
No, that's true.
Like, they would be like, what was wrong with the old agreement?
I guess
What's wrong with you?
If somebody does come back to you at some point and is like, hey, I want this story to be in this other anthology that would, like, promote your anthology, you could, like, revise the agreement at that time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think there's, like, a rising suspicion that that this collected work would be adapted for translation, licensing as a work, and or made into television or film, and, you know, those tend to not really happen with a collection, you know.
Oh yeah, that was actually part of the question that you didn't read because it was very long, was that the person wanted to retain their own licensing rights for their story, which, you know, is wishful thinking on their part, but also their prerogative if that's what they want to negotiate. I mean, it seems like what you're dealing with is just a bad negotiator.
Right, yeah. And so and, you know, and that to me is, like, the ultimate red flag. Like, if somebody doesn't know how to have a conversation and state their concerns, and not even stating their concerns, more important than that is stating, hi, would it be possible to do it this other way?
Yeah.
Is so much more effective. I mean, you can...
Or just being like, no, that doesn't work for me.
But, like, ultimately saying, I would be willing to agree to this,
right,
is so much more effective than anything else.
So, best case scenario is you publish this book without the difficult person in it, and it goes on to sell 1 million copies and raise so much money for the cause that you and all these authors care about, and some of them get discovered, and maybe you sell TV rights and then share the bounty amongst the authors. I don't know. Yeah, like, best case scenario is that, like, this book does exactly what you plan for it to do.
And, you know, so this is kind of why I'm, like, right back to, like, okay, well, then you probably, you know, if this person can't have this basic conversation with you, then it's a gift, because they're giving you an early warning sign that they don't deal well with what they perceive as conflict, and they can't navigate it without drama.
And also, like, you know, you're not working with this person is the best case scenario, and, like, unexpected success where the money is able to go into the causes rather than, like, enriching the authors is what everybody is signing up for here.
Yeah, that's true.
And this person, it sounds like they're not on the same page, so it's good not to participate in this particular project with them. Like, they might be an awesome person.
Yeah, and it might end. Yeah, like exactly. I wouldn't say like this. It just isn't their passion is to support this. Like their pursuit of their own wallet is a completely legitimate pursuit. You know?
It's like hard. Like if you're trying to make a living as a writer, you are counting those pennies and you are minding your licensing very carefully.
But to speak for other people isn't really helpful, or I mean, it's a boundary violation for one thing.
It's poorly done.
But so I'd say drop them and move along, and avoid having this come back tenfold in a year or two.
And if this is a conversation that's happening publicly, like keep in mind that you're not going to convince this person of anything on a public platform, so everything you say to them is for the benefits of the people silently watching and waiting to come to their own conclusion. I learned that from you, Joe. And so, like, you want to keep the focus on where the money is actually going, which is not to you and not to these authors, but to this cause that you've all signed up to support, and you can always move everything back into, like, supporting this cause, which is your whole goal here.
So, until next time, focus on why you were doing this, why you were excited about this in the first place.
And good luck, and congrats on your book coming out.
Thanks for joining us once again.
Please send your questions to podcast@microcosmpublishing.com so we can answer them on future episodes.
And please give us 5 stars on iTunes and everywhere else that podcasts are reviewed.
You can find us on the internet at microcosm.pub,
on Twitter at Microcosm,
on Facebook at Microcosm Publishing,
on Instagram at Microcosm_pub,
and here in Portland, Oregon on North Williams Avenue.
Thank you so much.
Have a wonderful week.